The most honest thing I can say this, and a lot of people might say it's mean to say this, but if you feel like this isn't for you and you actually genuinely feel this way, you should probably quit. But if you feel that there is hope that you might be able to do this, even if it means just having a 0.0001% chance of you being able to hit it, then you should keep going. Absolutely. Just brute force your way through it. And at some point, you will have success. And the most important thing is,
In today's episode, we have Sia, founder of GenPPT, which is at genppt.com, which is an AI-powered presentation tool that automates design, content creation, and structuring of various sources from PDFs, websites, and videos. And at just 18 years old, Sia has grown the platform to nearly 20,000 users with 500 to 600 daily signups, targeting mostly US-based employees that want to create presentations efficiently. Welcome to the show, Sia.
hey, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, you're quite young to launch something successful like this, but you started a while ago. You started coding at the age of 11, and during that process, you built many products that definitely weren't as successful as GenPPT. Tell us more about how did you stay motivated through all of those failures earlier on?
I think it's a mix of a couple of things. So the first one was obviously just passion. I loved building stuff. I love launching stuff and I love trying new things, especially when it comes to tech. The other part was just like people doubting me. So obviously when I try to do something great and big things that are usually like seen as very hard or only a lucky few will be able to do it, those kind of things were the things that attracted me the most. And I tried to do them, and obviously a lot of people were doubting me. So that's kind of what kept me going. I just wanted to prove them wrong.
Yeah, no, definitely. It makes sense as a motivator. As you were going through these iterations of other products in the past, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, were there any other successes that were even close to GenPPT?
I don't think there's anything that comes even close to GenPPT. The closest thing I can think of right now would probably be my freelancing agency that I had when I was 15. That was just during summer break. I was trying to get some money, and I saw that the Web3 hype was around. A lot of people were buying into NFTs, and I decided to hop on the train. I lost a lot of money while trading NFTs. And then I noticed, hey, all these people that are launching these NFT projects, they're all 20-year-olds that suddenly have $1 million and they don't really know what to do with the money. So I decided, let's use my skill and offer it to them as a service. I was able to do it for a month during summer break, and I made 8 or 9 thousand during that month.
That's awesome. That I think that skill of being able to identify opportunities is something that's critical to be able to like launch ideas. So speaking of that, what would you say made GenPPT take off when other projects, other ideas didn't have as much success or maybe just flat out failed? Like what about GenPPT do you think made it successful?
I think the approach was the reason why it succeeded. Because before I was just focusing on this saying of if you have a good product, the customers will come. In the end, it doesn't matter at all how good your product is because only a very, very few products that are very good are actually going to have people talk about them. 99% of products, no matter how good they are going to fail because nobody heard about them. And I was trying to launch good products, but then I saw Mark Liu. Mark Liu is a influencer on Twitter, and he's huge. He has like 140,000 followers, and he always preaches this approach of shipping very fast, so introducing new features as quickly as possible and getting user feedback. And I decided to try that out, give it a try, and I did exactly that. I launched the first version of GenPPT within 4 hours, and I was immediately able to get user feedback by sharing it on Twitter and getting 100, 200 people visiting the site and seeing, hey, people actually like this.
So when you think about shipping fast, I think what holds people back from shipping fast is that they might be focusing on the wrong things or they are thinking that they need to build more before they can actually ship. So tell us more about how you're able to make this mindset shift to start shipping fast. Like, what does it actually mean? Are you like being more strict about what actually makes it to the MVP? Or are you just focusing more on the right things this time? Tell us more about how other people that might take a long time, maybe they'll take weeks or months to ship something publicly for the first time. How can they get into the mindset of shipping something within a day or days?
Most important thing, obviously, is using the right tools to work quicker. So I had a talk just today with a developer who works at a $1 billion company essentially, and he's just another employee under hundreds of employees. And he didn't even know what Cursor was or what any of these tools are that a lot of the people that you see on Twitter are already using. And that just showed me that most of the developers that you see nowadays, they don't even know what the latest tech trends are or what the latest tools are that help you to ship quicker. So I would start with that. Just use tools like AI and leverage them so you can build a lot quicker. The second thing I would say is really, really narrow it down to the core features. If your app could be just an Excel spreadsheet, then only use an Excel spreadsheet. Don't even build an app for it. Really focus on that one feature that you need and then ship it out to a couple of people and see how they react to it. Because if you, for example, if you had something like Airbnb and you just made a spreadsheet where you listed all these single properties where people could actually reach out to the person, and the first people that you share it to, they don't even like it. They would never use it. It's not useful to them. You can immediately dump that and move on to the next idea. So narrowing it down, and sometimes that also means not adding features at all. When I launched GenPPT, it didn't have any payments, any authentication, login, nothing. I was losing money actually because it was free. And I just did that because I wanted to see if people would actually use it.
Tell us more about that initial feedback. So you mentioned that you shared on Twitter. Did you already have like a big following on there? Like how were you able to get people to even check out your product in the first place?
I wouldn't say I had a big following at the time where I launched it. I had around 700 or 800 followers, so it definitely helped, but I wouldn't say that it really skyrocketed the growth. In the first few days, I had 50 people. So the first week was around 50 people that visited the page and tried it. And those were all commenting under the tweet, under the initial tweet. And they said, hey, this is super cool. And I actually saw, because I also shared it with a couple of students who were in my class, and they sent me an image of them using it in school so that they wouldn't have to do the presentation on their own. So just seeing that already motivated me and showed me that there's an actual use case for this and people are interested.
Yeah. Do you have like a guide to know when you should continue to work on something, continue to iterate on something versus stopping? I mean, sounds like people were using it, they actually got value out of it. Is that like enough for you to know that let's continue to continue to build on this, or is there more that you need before you decide to invest more time into a product?
I see a lot of people saying that you should always validate with money. But for me personally, I think that you can monetize anything if you see value in it. The way I do that is, first of all, people are actually using it and getting value out of it. And the second one is probably more important is that it's shareable. People should get so much value out of it that they willingly share it without you having to tell them. They share it with their friends, or if a friend of them has a problem, they will recommend your tool. I think that's the core thing that would tell me, hey, this is something that I need to work upon.
How do you measure that? How do you measure the virality or shareability of a product? I guess how did you recognize it?
I wouldn't say that you need to go viral because that is probably like something that will discourage a lot of people. I would rather say like if you hear a couple of people telling you, "Oh, a friend told me about it," or just sharing it in inner circles, that's already enough. So it doesn't have to go absolutely viral. That's absolutely not the case. Just seeing like two or three people share it, that's enough for me.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, it doesn't have to be some a huge outcome, just like initial sense that there is enough value for people to recommend and refer your product is enough of a signal that there's something there. Each time you launch something new, do you find that things are transferable, like things that you learn, things that you build were transferable from product to product, or do you have to start from scratch each time? Like how do you shorten the window between new product idea launches?
I would definitely say that there's transferable knowledge. Each time you launch something, you learn something new, and that really helps in the end because you won't really notice it. For me personally, it was a process that took years. So for me, it just came naturally. I would learn copywriting with one product, and the next time I launch a product, I would know how to copyright properly. And even though like it's not a conscious thought that you have, but subconsciously you're able to now copyright. You don't really think about it as, or I personally don't really think about it as, oh, I learned this skill. It's just something that I can do after I've launched the product. That's also why I kind of believe like you can brute force your way to a successful startup.
That makes sense. It's like to some degree, it's almost like a numbers game where like if you just put enough effort into it, there's just like very little likelihood, very high likelihood of you hitting something that's going to be successful. So let's talk about these ideas that you came up from before. How do you identify whether an idea is worth building an MVP for, and worth trying to build a proof of concept for? Like, is there a threshold for you to decide, okay, that's a good enough idea for me to try to pursue?
The only reason I would build an idea is if it solves my own problem. I would never build an idea just because it's an idea. I don't do anything like that. I would only build one if I see value in it and if I would use it myself.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, for this particular, for GenPPT, it sounds like you were solving a problem, but then you also, I think there's like a seed of this problem or a seed of this solution where a friend of yours went through some kind of SEO or did some kind of auditing or some kind of report that helped you discover that there's also a market need for it. Can you tell us more about that?
Initially, I had that idea, but I wasn't really sure if I should build it. And then some night, I think it was perfectly midnight, a friend of mine who owns an SEO agency, he sent me a report of an affiliate website. It's a huge affiliate website that has a lot of blog posts, and they make their money by linking to other content and to products with affiliate links. So he sent me a report of their top pages, and I think the number 4 spot was AI presentation generator. And I saw that and I was like, how hard can it be? I mean, why shouldn't I try to build this? Because I was thinking about building it anyway. I just wasn't sure. So I researched for a couple of minutes and I immediately saw a library that could help me create PowerPoints programmatically. And I just hooked that up to an AI, and that was the birth of GenPPT.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's maybe like two criteria that you want to hit, which is that scratches your own itch, but do you also require that there be some kind of validation outside of yourself that there might be a market need for or that other people need it as well? Or is that not as important as scratching your own itch?
I will build a product either way if I think that I personally need it. I will build it for myself and just launch it to the public. I just did that yesterday with another product. But yeah, if I'm trying to hit revenue, I will definitely make sure that there is some demand for the product itself. I think a better way to approach it would be to look if there's competition. I always like to tell people if there's competition, then there's money to be made. You don't need to own the market. You just need like a small piece of the pie.
So, given that you built GenPPT entirely by yourself, like what is your development strategy? How do you prioritize what features to work on? How do you make sure that you are set up to actually build the different features and expand the products?
I use Next.js. I try to keep it very simple. Next.js combined with Tailwind CSS and Supabase for the backend. I'm going to be 100% honest. I don't even know how to create a proper backend. I've been using Supabase my entire life. Have been using Firebase as well a couple of times, but I just keep it very simple by using that stack.
Awesome. Now, what about like prioritizing features? Like, how do you decide what you should actually be spending time building?
I think it's a combination of difficulty and how requested the feature is. If I see a feature or maybe also a bug that people are complaining about or that people actually want, then I will prioritize that first, obviously. But if it's something that's way too difficult, then I'll take something else. So most of the time, I'll just pick the easiest thing and quickly finish it off. That's when I move to the next thing that's a bit harder and a bit harder, and I leave the hardest part for the end.
And where are you getting these ideas from, or bug report, or bugs, or feature ideas? Are they just like customers emailing in, or there's some other way for you that you find helpful to collect ideas for features?
I mean, now, if we're speaking of right now, with that many users, I'm getting emailed multiple times a day. So it's kind of stressful sometimes to even keep up with that. But yeah, currently I'm getting emailed a lot of times. But especially in the beginning, that's why I also like to fix my own problems with code is you are your own target audience. So you can just fix whatever is needed for you, and chances are high that other people will have the same problem if they have the same problem as you do.
So we mentioned at the start of this that you've grown to 20,000 users and the growth is only accelerating at 500 to 600 daily signups. Can you break down, at least at the beginning, what was the launch process like to get the initial burst of users? Was it all through Twitter? And then like what's the ongoing marketing that allows you to continue to grow like 500, 600 signups a day?
So in the beginning, I would try to get it out to as many platforms as possible. I didn't really know who my ICP was. I didn't really know who to market it to, who was most likely to buy it, who was most likely to actively use it. So I just tried every single marketing channel. I would write Reddit posts, I would write Quora replies, I would try to guest post on other blogs, I would try listing it on directories. And obviously, the one that worked best in the beginning was just posting about it on Twitter. Then that kind of shifted as I started to learn what my ICP was. And I started to kind of switch what I use and how I market it. And now I'm completely organic. I don't have any paid ads. I don't have a social media. I mean, I tried TikTok for a while and I've got like 500,000 views in 2 or 3 days. But the problem is that didn't really sell well. So now I'm back to completely being organic, Google and other ways. And that has been working fantastically for me. The conversion rate from visitor to sign up is almost 70%.
So you mentioned the acronym ICP, which I think stands for like ideal customer profile. How do you recommend that approach that you just took to try to identify who is your customer, where are they, and how can you acquire them? Is that the approach that you took of just kind of like trying all different platforms? Is that what you recommend for other people to do as well?
I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. My recommendation is always like find any way possible where you can get traffic and get your first sales in, and then just try to collect as much data as possible. I just did it because I didn't know who my people were going to be that were going to use it the most. Is it going to be students or professionals? In the beginning, I was actually trying to reach more students, but I noticed that students weren't likely to buy it. So I had to switch that over to professionals who use it at work. And that's kind of like the thing that you notice. So collecting data is probably the best thing that you can do if you want to figure out who your ICP is.
And speaking of this shift from students to professionals and employees, how did you adapt, or rather, did you adapt your product or your marketing to appeal to this new market of professionals rather than students?
Yes, absolutely. I had to pivot to actually please more business professionals, and also had to change a lot of the design themes that we offer and a lot of the ways that the things work, so that it just seems more professional, because a student is going to be fine with a website that's a bit more playful, that's a bit more simple, let's put it that way. And someone who uses it for work, they want something professional, they need something professional. So for them, you actually need to do great copywriting. You need to focus on all these little things that you wouldn't necessarily have to do with students. And the marketing is obviously also a thing that I really had to pivot, because for students, it would be fine if I just made a couple of TikToks and that would work super well. And it also did. I think in a day we had 1,000 visitors in one day when I first started TikTok. And the problem with that was just nobody's buying it.
That makes sense that a product for a specific customer base might be interesting. They might be interested in it, but they might actually end up spending the money on it. And so you mentioned that your ability to recognize that the market was in professionals came from you collecting data. And you mentioned that's like that you mentioned to us that that's one of the most impactful business decisions that you made for GenPPT. Can you tell us more about what data are you collecting? 'Cause I think it's like almost like a very big term of like, okay, collect data, but then for a lot of people that are new to entrepreneurship or new to launching products, they might not know like what data should I be collecting? Like, are there specific tools that should be used to collect data, or is it just more is it less organized than that? Like, tell us more about the way that you collect data.
I mean, just to clarify, if anyone's listening to this, I don't want anyone to go and try to figure out where your customers are living or anything like that, their house address. Collecting data is more about how the customer uses your product and what he's expecting from it. 90% of your customers are not going to give you feedback. They don't have the time. They don't feel like giving you feedback. If your product is bad, they'll just cancel their subscription, get a refund, and go. They're not going to give you any explanation for it whatsoever. So you need to get that information yourself. This can mean just adding a pop-up where you ask for feedback and actively trying to seek feedback, or obviously using tools like PostHog, or I think Sentry does the same, but I use PostHog to kind of identify, okay, users are more likely to click on this than that, and try to figure out how the user flows and how the user flow goes through your entire app.
So speaking of collecting information or rather collecting data from like chat pop-ups, you or customer feedback, one of the ways that you have scaled up your customer support is you want to make sure they're quick and personal responses. And you actually use AI here. So tell us more about how you set up your I guess your triage or the way that you interact with customers using AI.
Right now, there's a mix of multiple things. I will do them based on how I'm feeling. I'm going to be completely honest here. I do have kind of a system in place where I use AI for, especially like when it comes down to more rude customers that aren't so nice to deal with. I will use AI because I know that it's going to be a back and forth. It's going to be like a ping pong game. I don't have the time to essentially engage with these people. But for people that are very nice and like open, for them, I will actually take my time to reply myself just because of the feedback. Because these people are oftentimes very likely to give you feedback if you're just going to be nice back to them. It doesn't matter if they want a refund, if they think that your product shit, if they have a feature request or whatever it may be. Those people are the people that you actually want to chat with. And all the rude customers, if you notice anything rude, just use AI there and set it up in a way where it knows about your terms of service, about your privacy policy, how to cancel the subscription, and all that stuff. And then I also adapt it to my English level, which is going to be like B1, B2. So I try to put it a level above that. So I tell the AI to write in B2 or C1 level, and it's pretty good at that.
Awesome. So you mentioned that when you first launched, you did not have authentication, didn't have payments. So once you started charging, how did you approach converting all these users that got this for free into being paid customers? Tell us more about how you make that transition.
I'm going to be completely honest here. In the beginning, I didn't really know how to properly convert customers. I just put up an upgrade page, and as soon as someone would log in, I would just redirect them to the upgrade page and tell them to pay, essentially. And that kind of worked, but obviously it wasn't ideal because the customer didn't really have any connection to the product. So he wouldn't feel, and he wasn't likely to buy it.
So you mean that these are people that would sign up and they wouldn't be able to use it yet, but that they would be asked to pay? That's what you mean?
Yes, exactly. It's an AI product. So my first thought was obviously we can't offer this for free because as soon as they use it, I have costs that I have to cover. And that was kind of a wrong way of thinking, but it was my thinking back then, yeah.
And what's the approach now? How do you, is it like a free trial first? How do people understand the value of the product before they're asked to pay?
So currently we have some free tools on the website which act as kind of a lead magnet, if you want to put it that way. So we'll have something like PowerPoint karaoke generators, PDF to PowerPoint generators, a website to PowerPoint, and all that stuff that ranks for SEO as well. And most people, when they go on the page, they have two options. They either click on Get Started or they check out the tools page. If they check out the tools page, they immediately see the value. In the Get Started part, they are currently going through an onboarding flow, and after the onboarding flow, they get redirected to the upgrade page. But I'm going to be working on fixing that so that we can, in the future, hopefully offer the entire thing for free and just make the AI part paid feature.
So tell us more about pricing. Like, how did you decide on pricing? What is the pricing today? Like, how did you decide on? I guess it's kind of an evolving thing, but like, how did you decide on pricing for the prices that's set today?
Honestly, in the beginning, I just thought of a fair price. I used to actually offer lifetime plans, which a lot of people think it's not profitable, but I can tell anyone out there, if anyone's in the beginning days of their startup, offering a lifetime deal could be super beneficial because you get money upfront. You get more money than if you were to give up a subscription. Because if your startup is just starting out and you put up a subscription, chances are high that the lifetime value of your customer is not that great. So what I used to do is I would offer $9 monthly or $47 for lifetime. And that worked super well. A lot of people were buying the lifetime plans, and I was making, I mean, I wouldn't say I was making a lot of money, but for the beginning days, it was definitely solid. Yeah.
What is it about these lifetime deals that you think is so attractive? Is just the fact that they don't have to pay anymore after that? Like, what? It sounds like if you were to launch another product, would you go with that same approach to have like a lifetime deal at the start of it?
If I can, absolutely, yeah. Like if there's no super high cost for it, absolutely. If you're only paying 2 or 3 cents per generation for each customer and they maybe generate 2 or 3 times a week, then absolutely that is completely fine. So I think the reason that lifetime deals are super attractive right now is because everyone's switching to monthly plans, everyone's switching to these subscriptions, which makes more sense from a business standpoint. But let's be honest, people are sick of the subscriptions. They just want to go back to the old times where you could pay for something once and then have it.
Oh, that's interesting that while everyone's zigging towards making everything pay per month, pay per usage, if you are zagging and actually giving them the products by just paying it once, it makes your products seem even more valuable than others. So one thing that you mentioned to us was that, obviously you launched this product. You mentioned the first version of it in just 4 hours, but you've been building on it consistently since then. And you've been candid online about the lack of work-life balance where you're working until the early hours, like 2, 3 a.m. Tell us more about how you're able to sustain yourself while you are kind of putting in these kind of hours.
I mean, honestly, the biggest factor for me is just eating good food and trying to stay as healthy as possible outside of sleep. Just good food alone and not completely relying on caffeine is already going to do a lot for you, and especially for your body. So, for example, right now, as you can see behind me, I'm in an office setting. I still go to school, obviously, and in Switzerland, we have a system where you go to school and at the same time you work. So I'll go to school one day a week and work for 4 days a week at a company so I can get my diploma. Right now, for me, it's almost 10 p.m. and I'm sitting here in the office. I'm the last person here, and I'm on this podcast right now. So it's honestly about like prioritizing what you want to do and then trying to find a way to do it.
One thing that we see people asking you a lot on online is about what you would do, what kind of advice maybe you would give yourself at the beginning of this journey with GenPPT to shortcut, speed up, or gain more success. Like if you go back in time and give yourself some advice, like what would that be?
Honestly, there's no shortcuts at all. That is probably the number one thing. Like trying to look for shortcuts is probably the thing that keeps most people from, and me included, from actually being fast because we constantly look for shortcuts, even though there are none. The second thing, though, would probably be to focus on making the product good a bit earlier before you focus on purely marketing it. In the beginning, you obviously want to know if your product is actually something that will sell, if people actually want it, and how you can acquire customers. But as soon as you've figured that out, you should focus on building the best product and not further marketing it. It might feel a bit bad because you're not constantly hitting new highs in numbers, but at the same time, as soon as you then start marketing it, those people are going to stick around for a lot longer because they actually see the value in the product.
So I'll leave this last question then. So for other kind of indie developers, solo developers that are starting their own products and startups who feel stuck where they have multiple strings of failed products and they're just maybe starting to think to themselves that maybe this isn't for me. I've obviously have had no success yet. I've tried this many different times and I haven't hit on anything yet. What advice would you give them based on your own experience?
The most honest thing I can say this, and a lot of people might say it's mean to say this, but if you feel like this isn't for you and you actually genuinely feel this way, you should probably quit. But if you feel that there is hope that you might be able to do this, even if it means just having a 0.0001% chance of you being able to hit it, then you should keep going. Absolutely. Just brute force your way through it. And at some point, you will have success. And the most important thing is you need to recognize that success. You need to see, okay, this is something successful and not exit early. That is a problem I used to struggle with a lot. I would have some initial success, like getting more users than my last app, but I would suddenly quit because I didn't feel like continuing it, or because I didn't feel like I was having the success I was supposed to have. And that is probably one thing that makes a lot of people think maybe this isn't for me.
It's a great point that I'm glad that we're ending on this, which is that you might not feel successful because maybe you just aren't, maybe your perspective about what is considered success, especially early on, is just very skewed. And I think that can happen whenever you are hearing stories like this one and you're thinking that I need to have 20,000 users next week and I need to be growing at 500, 600 signups a day as well. When the successes that got you to where you are today are probably strings of like smaller successes that if you weren't so quick to dismiss them as, not big enough or not fast enough or not successful enough, you would see that you are actually making progress. And I think that's important, that you shouldn't define success by like some outcome that you hear on this show, because it takes a while to get there. And it takes, obviously, you had success in this in a relatively short period of time, but it took you, 7, 8 years to get to this point. So I think that's important to call out, that success shouldn't be measured by the outcome that you see from other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So thank you so much for your time, Sia. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey, your advice, and experience with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.